Here we will see web browser. A web browser is basically the software that we use for browsing on the internet and displaying pages. Web browsers are application programs that display a www document, and they usually access the document using other internet services. The browser requests for services and documents, and the server displays the web content. Here the browser acts as a bridge or an interface between the server and the client. A web browser is a program that reads the website on the internet and displays them to you. The user interacts with the browser by typing the addresses or URL into it. When you use a web browser, your computer sends a request to the server containing all of the information needed to display that website. A response is sent back to the computer, which displays the content on that page. Some browsers have additional features such as cookies, which can be used for storing user preferences or even tracking users' online activity. Here is the architecture of web browser, which contains different layers as user interface, browser engine, rendering engine, and data persistence. Where user interface is the space where interaction between users and browser occurs. Most of the browsers have common inputs for user interface. Some of them are address bar, next and back buttons, buttons for home, refresh and stop, and options to bookmark web pages, etc. Browser engine is the piece of code that communicates the input of the user interface with the rendering engine. It is responsible for querying and manipulating the rendering engine according to the inputs from various user interfaces. Rendering engine. It is the part which is responsible for displaying the requested content on the screen. It first passes the HTML tags, and then using the styles, it builds a render tree and finally a render layout which displays the content on the screen. Networking is the fraction of code written in the browser which is responsible to send various network calls. For example, sending the HTTP request to the server. JavaScript interpreter. It is the component of the browser written to interpret the JavaScript code presented in a web page. UI backend. This draws the basic widgets on the browser like combo boxes, text boxes, etc. Data storage. It is the small database created on the local drive of the computer where the browser is installed. This database stores various files like cache, cookies, etc. World Wide Web works on the client-server model. A user computer works as a client which can receive and send data to the server. When a web page is requested by a user, the browser contacts the requested server, that is where the website is stored, and by fetching and interpreting the requested files, it displays the web page on the computer screen. The whole process takes place in 3 steps. First, contact to DNS server, that is when a user enters a URL into the address bar and hits enter. First, browser contacts to the DNS server. DNS server stores IP addresses of the server associated with the corresponding domain name. The DNS server takes the domain name from the browser and returns the corresponding IP address to the browser. Second step is contact to server. After getting the IP address of the server for the requested web page, browser sends a request to the server for the desired file. HTTP protocols are used to transfer the web page named articles to the browser. The protocol decides the format as well as the methods of the communication between the web client and the server. And third is rendering. The entire process followed by a browser from fetching the web page to displaying it on the screen is called rendering. When a browser receives an instruction to access a web page, it transfers this instruction to the TCP, that is Transmission Control Protocol. The job of the TCP is to ensure the correct sequence of the transmission of a message and its correct unpacking at the destination or receiver. But before it sends the data parcels uniquely over the network, it uses HTTP for putting an address label on this message that is unique to it. This message then goes from the browser to the server known as HTTP request. The web server receives it, searches the appropriate page, verifies it, and locates it. It then parcels the HTML present in the intended page using TCP or another protocol of the transport layer, which addresses this parcel using HTTP to the browser and then transmit them across the network. The browser displays this message, that is response, from the server, which is also known as HTTP response. Some popular web browsers are Google Chrome, Mozilla Firefox, Apple Safari, Microsoft Edge, Tor browser, Opera, and Brave.